The afternoon sun glares down upon the group as they await Thavius Krieg's arrival. After a few moments of tense expectation, a meager wagon crests the southern side of Duskhawk Hill. The first figure seen is a large hulking form with a grim face, wearing Paladin of Torm iconography. Juxtaposing the colossal figure is the appearance of a frail older man who is afflicted with severe leprosy. 4 shrouded acolytes and Neris walk alongside the wagon, with the shield in tow. As the sun glints off the shield's surface, a grimacing face with jagged teeth is revealed. Octai and Blywyn wait in silent solidarity together. Behind Octai's peerless eyes lies a maelstrom of emotion from Pazuzu as the shield is revealed. Despite its best efforts, Pazuzu is afraid. Meanwhile, scouting the skies above, Archimedes reveals an approaching cavalry's position to Korgim. Concealed in the tall southwestern grass, Kriegdor detects 5 cloaked imps flying overhead and informs the group. To Blywyn's relief, Beetle remains safely at Kriegdor's side. Judaiah is stationed northwest with the nuts and bolts and single-handedly routs an ambush of hidden archers. While feebly descending the wagon, Thavius' eyes remain transfixed on Octai with a piercing intent. Blywyn warily watches the congregation cross the creek. Kelenvor's scales flutter with restless energy, signaling the arrival of danger. The group's distrust for Neris' associates begins to mount as she arrives with the clear and present danger in tow. Recalling their first attempt almost a fortnight ago, Blywyn senses Thavius' illusory visage. In an urgent attempt, Blywyn begins to signal to Judaiah who Thavius truly is. As Thavius presses unbearably close to him, Octai comments on Thavius' illusory appearance. To everyone's disappointment, Thavius is amused by this statement. Sensing control over the situation, Thavius places a large iron nail over Octai's crown, proclaiming that Pazuzu's corrupted soul can be placed inside and destroyed in an ambiguous, holy text. Korgim watches in frustration as the group allows Thavius to take command of the situation. He calls out, beseeching the group to come to their senses. Octai's desperation dismisses suspicious behavior from his mind, however. Perhaps these lowlanders know things he does not. This wouldn't be like all the other times he misinterpreted, Octai muses. However, when an acolyte spots Korgim amid the tall grass, the mood turns sour. The acolytes begin manhandling Korgim, which triggers Octai into surreptitiously palming a bag of flour and a distraction bomb from his gear. Inexplicably, one of Krieg's acolytes sees this and attempts to grapple with Octai. Blywyn, seeing this, intervenes, requesting a time out, and that is when the proverbial shit hits the fan. Krieg makes a mistake. A man of power and one accustomed to getting what he wants, casts Hold a Person on Blywyn, Neris, and Octai. And this signals an unmistakable malicious intent. Until this point, Octai was willing to put himself in possible danger for the sake of his friends and the people of Baldur's Gate to be free of Pazuzu's mind control, but no longer. Meanwhile, Korgim sidesteps the grip of an acolyte. His frustration has crescendoed, and decides to do what he does best, create confusion and misdirection. He weaves an illusion in the sky, the insignia of the Cult of Bane, which in turn prematurely draws in the enemy cavalry and the paladin Balok waiting in the hills. Krieg begins chanting a ritual, assuming the weak will of his prey. Foul imps begin descending upon Korgim with deadly intent, and Kriegdor begins sneaking into the fray, a deadly threat forming on his feline lips. Pazuzu begins tormenting Octai's mind by making him relive the slaughter of his village and reveals a vision of Vernok, amid the treasure hoard of a dragon's lair, trying to manipulate Octai into action. And then Krieg's windpipe closes, halting the chanting, as a tabaxian paw squeezes his trachea and a suicide pill saved from the sewers slips in between the priest's lips.
You should not have signed on with Bane. You signed your own doom at that point.
Release my friends before I crush this suicide pill between your teeth, heretic, Kriegdor whispers in his ear. This sudden threat to his life causes Krieg's concentration to lapse, and the party is released from his clutch. Octai meets his sudden freedom of movement with a brutal blow to the closest acolyte's midsection, bursting his liver and doubling him over. He then snatches up the bag of flour and pulls the fuse on one of his distraction bombs. Deftly, he rolls over the back of the blood-heaving acolyte and tosses the sack, causing a mid-air explosion of fine flour 20 feet above Korgim.
I'm still picking flour out of my beard.
The flour envelops the imps, blinding them, before Korgim inflames the cloud with furious flames. To everyone's surprise, Thavius meets Kriegdor's threat with a gleeful acceptance and bites down on the suicide pill. He drops down to his knees and bursts into a demonic flame, instantly incinerating his body and leaving only his singed priestly vestments and the Book of Vile Darkness as Neris looks on, horrified. At this point, Balok has crested the hill along with his cavalry and closed in on the party, but are soon outflanked by Raya and the Hellriders, leaving Balok without his planned reinforcements. Neris, seeing this traitor, recklessly charges into combat with him, her holy sword flashing out with deadly ease. As Kriegdor, Blywyn, and Octai dispatch the remaining acolytes, Korgim incapacitates Balok with a levitation spell, rendering him helpless. One remaining imp sees the Book of Vile Darkness and picks it up and begins to fly away with it. During this time, Archimedes is damaged and falls to the grass. Kriegdor and Neris begin cutting pieces off of Balok as he is spun in mid-air. Blywyn casts a radiant bolt at Balok, dismembering his branded Bane hand and making him bellow in pain. Octai begins a full sprint towards Balok, snatching up the shield of the Hidden Lord. He leaps into the air above the flailing paladin and uses his weight and momentum to slam him to the ground, the spiked tower shield in between them. His helmet is removed, and a flurry of blows meets the skull of the paladin before he yields. Kriegdor meanwhile has been assisting Korgim, and seeing the fleeing imp, snipes it with a stone, crashing it to the soil with its cargo. At this point, the remaining enemy sellsword cavalry has been run off by the Hellriders, and the rest of the foes are taken prisoner, bound with ropes. The prisoners are stripped down and forced to dig graves for the deceased. Neris and Blywyn perform ritual rites over the graves. Judaiah and Korgim find the Modron hammer, gravely injured, and are informed of suspicious riders heading to Cliffside Cemetery. Judaiah finds that there have been some Modron casualties, and comes close to taking the life of one of the enemy archers as retribution. However, with a bit of diplomacy, Korgim questions Judaiah's uncharacteristic impulse of vengeance. With the fortuitous interruption of a Hellrider messenger and Korgim's lingering challenge, Judaiah chooses a revelation instead of a justification. Judaiah reveals to the gnome a somber past, one filled with the loss of lives under his prior command.
I've commanded men before, and they all died.
The group finds Thavius' journal among the other spoils of battle, and upon closer investigation find it to be locked and equipped with a deadly trap. Neris obtains the iron nail and the journal for the time being. She blesses Kriegdor and creates a dampening field around the Book of Vile Darkness to protect the Tabaxi as he retains the literature. The group charges Raya and the Hellriders with marching the prisoners back to Baldur's Gate to be imprisoned, and the party takes 2 horses and a wagon towards Cliffside Cemetery. When they arrive, they realize it is the middle of the night, on the festival of the moon, an ill omen to their success. However, the urgency of the safety of Baldur's Gate drives them forward nonetheless. They decide to leave Neris and Beetle with the wagon and the Book of Vile Darkness on the outskirts of the cemetery. They use the pilfered loot from Balok, the deceased priest, and the acolytes to disguise the party and enter the cemetery. Kriegdor uses the Gem of Seeing and finds the grounds to be densely occupied by the spirits of the dead, some curious and some aloof. Kriegdor speaks with the ghost of a 700-year-old elf and discovers that the ghosts are in purgatory, and that the cemetery is occupied by the fury of the Saw family. The Saws came from old money and were all murdered, which ultimately caused the downfall of the family and banned the land from being inherited for 300 years. The family consequently having been housed in the mausoleum within the grounds. The fatal news is written by the party and sent off with Archimedes to inform Nereus and the Flaming Fist that trouble is coming. The group finally comes across a crypt, and after hearing muffled speaking and cries from within, the party uses the key they were given by the dwarf Davin and swing the doors of the crypt open.